Welcome to another episode of It's a Numbers Game with myself, Adam Morris, and my co-host, Daniel Welling. Today, we are diving into the world of recruitment strategy with our special guest, Dean Watmough. If you've ever struggled with finding the right talent for your MSP or just want to sharpen your hiring practices, this episode is for you. Dean is co-founder and CEO of Humanize, specializing in tech and cyber security recruitment. In this episode, you'll learn how to create an attractive employer brand to stand out in a competitive job market, the best practices for recruiting and retaining top talent, even on a budget, strategies to ensure your onboarding process sets new hires up for success from day one, and much more. This conversation is packed with lots of actionable insights. So please welcome Dean Watmough.
Great to have you finally on the podcast with us. This has been, I think, 6 or 7 months in the planning.
It's been a while. A few things have gone against us, but it's good to be here, gents. Thank you for having me.
And funnily enough, we've had a recent recruitment theme, so we're keen to move the conversation on from previous podcast episodes. And before we do, though, in the green room, as we often do with our guests, we talk about life, the universe, and everything. And the irony that is the MSP industry being resistant to outsourcing the very thing that they themselves provide in from an IT perspective. So maybe just kick us off with some thoughts around that, Dean.
I think obviously the MSP sector is full of very capable people, very strong technically, can turn their hand to anything. No doubt they're very good at DIY and all those things as well, and will give anything a go. But I think, recruitment is one of those things that there's often a lot more involved than you think there is. And just as MSPs advise their clients, look, if you want the job doing right, give the job to a specialist. And that's our standpoint. Anybody can recruit, of course they can, but it's down to if you've got the time, the skills, the resources to do it properly and do it justice. That's the only way really you find good people that are going to fit your organization.
So capability, and maybe let's focus a little bit of our time today on talking about the capability part. So whether we've outsourced it or we manage it in-house, or indeed a blend of the two, maybe let's dive into some sort of best practice approaches to recruitment that would apply regardless of whether the MSP is doing it themselves or working with a partner. Maybe we were talking before about candidates, and you described a situation where there's 25 CVs that you're having to go through and assess. But for some of our listeners, having 25 CVs of any standard would be a dream come true, let alone 3 or 4 that are ideal. So maybe candidate search and attraction is the starting point for this. Where do people start, and what makes the difference?
I think volume of applicants and candidates is often a mixed blessing because, it's like anything. It's like marketing. And recruitment is actually part of the marketing process. There are 4 P's of marketing: price, product, place, promotion, but there's a 5th one, which is people. Okay. So it should be treated very much like marketing, especially that attraction piece. And it's all about attracting the right audience or the right candidates. There's no point, shouting your message if you're an MSP to people who don't want to hear it or are not the right people to receive it. Same with applicants and with candidates. So, a lot of MSPs will put a job ad out on something like Indeed or one of the other job boards. They'll either get nothing, okay, or they'll get a raft of applicants, the majority of which are unsuitable, but they still have to trawl through them to try and spot that needle in the haystack. And that's time consuming. And our kind of philosophy is, unless you've got the time to do that, you're wasting your time. And that time should be better spent running your business. And hand off the stuff that you're not the best person to be doing or don't have the time or resource to do well to either someone else or an outsourced provider. I think a lot of MSPs could do a better job if they presented the business better. So that's your employer brand. Just like you have a brand for your business, you also have an employer brand. And that's, what you tell the world, what your employees tell the world about what it's like to work there. You know, quite a few MSPs will have a careers page on their website. Great. That is such a good thing to have. But it's just like, the rest of your website. It needs to be kept current, needs to be kept relevant. And you need to, have, employee stories on there, things that are engaging. So hopefully, when you do come to recruit, people can do their homework, because candidates do their homework now. They're interested in a lot more.
Dean, can you just expand on what you're talking about here? I'm really interested to know, outside of salary, what is it that attracts candidates to an MSP? So the small MSPs that are out there may be a bit more budget conscious. Maybe they're competing with engineers who are, looking at bigger organizations offering big packages and salaries. What can the MSP do to attract good MSP candidates? What are those things that those guys are looking for?
So there's two things there. There's two parts to that. Firstly, absolutely, an MSP, their preference would quite often be somebody with MSP experience. But you're naturally reducing the size of the talent pool by looking for people with MSP experience. Okay, we get it, but a lot of the time, clients will say to us, it's more about attitude. Just because you've not worked in an MSP doesn't mean you're not going to fit into an MSP or have the skill sets and capabilities and aptitude to work well within that environment. So that's one of the things to maybe look, expand your horizons. Look for those behavioral qualities and capabilities, as opposed to just the tech stack that people have been working with. Benefits are very important as well. This, in terms of MSP world, quite often we see still quite an old-fashioned way of approaching benefits, in terms of standard holiday entitlement, still at 20 days. You know, Candidates, particularly on the entry level and lower salary levels, if they're getting 25 or 26 or 27 days holiday plus bank holidays, and they're only 25 grand, to go to 26 or 27, but to get less holidays has an impact. And, it is part of their decision making. So we see that now. They are really looking for benefits which, lean more towards that work life balance. It's a stressful role on a service desk, particularly, right? We all know that. So, companies that kind of look after their people, but do it authentically as well, not just say it. That's again where that employer brand and those employee stories really come in. That's important. So things around mental health, we're seeing a lot of that now. It's not just a buzzword. A lot of companies taking that to heart and really trying to instill that and genuinely promote it within their businesses. Techies love tech. Okay. Tech budgets, they want to, be able to buy the latest tech, and things like that really work. Things like CycleWorks been around for a long time. It's not really that high up on what candidates look for. Sabbaticals. We've got one client that for every 5 years of service, they give you a 4-week paid sabbatical. So, because it's not just about attracting, it's about retaining. It's so destructive to your business when you lose good people, because I think it's something like the average cost to bring someone in and hire someone is only about £3,000, but the impact of that position left unfilled is £8,500 every month. And that's in lost productivity. That's in the someone else taking the slack and the workload that might lead to them being off work, things like that. So yeah, it's just thinking outside the box. A lot of it comes down to common sense. And I always say, look, is this somewhere you'd want your son or daughter or a relative to work? Are those benefits, are the way you treat your people endearing and genuine? Or is it just a sweatshop and you're just saying those things?
Yeah, Dean, there's some really good stuff there. In particular, I really like the tech budget side. What kind of laptop do you want? How many screens do you want? How many fancy stands to put the screens on do you want? All this kind of stuff. You can just have it. And I really like the sabbatical idea. I think that's a fantastic idea. Yeah, perfect.
In
I
fact,
didn't touch upon the obvious, which is Dan, the obvious, which is the flexibility. Again, that hybrid remote. I know a lot of MSPs need people in, especially on that service desk, but others, and I think there needs to be a blend. There really does, especially for younger people entering. into the marketplace, they need mentoring, they need hand holding, they need to be sat there being able to talk to senior members of the team and really get a feel for what's going on. But we see it a lot where people will accept an offer elsewhere because there's more hybrid and flexibility in that kind of working environment.
We're going to take a quick break whilst I quickly introduce MSP Finance Team, the hosts of this podcast. You started your MSP to help business owners master technology. Isn't it time you were rewarded for that? MSP Finance Team helps hard-working MSP owners finally get the profit, time, and control they deserve. With better financial and strategic insight, you can make better decisions, leading to more control, profit, and time. Our approach is unique. We focus exclusively on MSP businesses, and we meld bookkeeping, CFO as a service, accounting, and mentoring to help you get started, scale, or sell. We bring you the freedom to focus on what's important, whether it's growing your business strategically or enjoying spontaneous moments with your family. So visit mspfinanceteam.com today and take the first step towards financial mastery. Because when it comes to your MSP finances, it's not just business, it's a numbers game.
I'll come on to the point I was going to make in just a moment, but talking about that flexibility point, the pushback, of course, from the MSP. So representing the MSP owner in this discussion, if I allow people to work from home and everyone has that flexibility, that then puts the operational capability of the business at risk, or makes it harder to ensure we've got enough cover. And perhaps in a bigger team, you can afford a bit more of that. But in the smaller team, the 3, 4, 5s, let's say the sub 20, and I know problems do scale. So, yeah, not all things are solved by size, but how do you see those MSPs offering that level of flexibility as standard? How are they coping operationally?
It's to having the right process, isn't it? I think having mature management, the way you onboard people, onboarding is often forgotten. And, I've been part of and experienced really bad onboarding. And that's in senior roles. And because I was, mature enough and thick-skinned enough, you work through it and you find the answers yourself. But that shouldn't really be the case. And I think if you've got thorough onboarding, it's well thought through, and there's good solid processes in place, there's communication channels which are open, then it shouldn't be that much of a problem. But like I say, hey, I've run a small MSP. I wanted those guys sat around. I couldn't wait to get out of COVID and be able to get everybody back in the office, because you do also miss out on that bond, that team bonding, that banter, and you need a bit of bantering on a service desk because, as we said, it's a stressful place to be. So it's down to the individual operation. I think those that can't offer it as much, then there's things they can do and to attract good candidates who may have an offer elsewhere or may already be working in more of a hybrid remote environment. And that is to get them in for half a day. Let them spend half a day with you. Let them get a feel for your employer brand, for your culture, because that often swings it. Then it's not just I'm comparing, black with white here. It is, well, do you know what? I've been in that experience where it's like to work in there. I've met that team. And actually, I wouldn't mind spending every day in that environment. So there are ways you can compete. You don't have to just offer like for like. But again, it comes down to common sense. You've got to appreciate what the marketplace is like and what is being on offer elsewhere. And you need to keep up with that, or you need to present what you do in a way which makes it appealing and engaging.
Dean, my mind is racing with the come in for half a day concept. I think we might have tried something like it years ago. I think the challenge was always, what are they going to do? You can't give them, log-ons. What's a worthwhile exercise? How does it work? I mean, what could you give me some meat on the bones here? What could an MSP look to do with those 4 hours to kind of impart that personality, that culture?
So bear in mind, at this stage, we're probably after they've interviewed somebody. So they've probably had, the standard type of interview. And then it's a case of, look, let's just get you in. Let's just meet the team. Okay. They're not going to be sat on the desk, answering tickets, obviously security issues with that and everything. But it's more of a get to know you, team bonding kind of feel for things. go out for go out for a coffee with a member of the team you'll be working closely with. Then you can get the warts and all. You might
So,
go
so, so,
back.
so some informal, half an hour sitting with the guys on the desk, meeting the team lead for a half an hour, going out for a coffee, having lunch with somebody else. That kind of a process. That's the kind of thing you're thinking of.
100%.
Yeah, got it.
Getting behind the curtain, seeing what it's really like. And again, it all ties back to that employer brand. If you're presenting your employer brand in the right way, and you've put time and effort, and quite often in smaller MSPs, they're not recruiting that often. So this is not something they would, see they need to spend a lot of time on. If you're going to be recruiting fairly regularly, then I'd certainly say that employer brand piece is very important, because you can also be building up a talent pool of engaged potential candidates. So when the time comes that you do have a position, or someone comes onto the market that you really don't want to miss, you're really well placed to be able to reduce the time it takes to fill that role. So employer brand, very important, but that getting them in for half a day, that's all part of that employer brand positioning.
Yeah, because I think in the past when I'd done arranged trials for prospective team members, it was as much about us assessing them as them assessing us. But of course, to do that, we had that same conundrum of what can we get them to do. But I think you're spot on. It's got to be more about selling the MSP to the candidate, rather than, at that point you're already happy that the candidate is going to have the right attributes for you. The other point I was going to make earlier was, I also like that sabbatical concept. Two reasons. The first is it ticks that retaining, so tackling attrition in the medium and long term, which I think is the key risk. Generally, my experience was, if someone was going to leave, they left pretty quickly, and then you had a good period from, say, the end of year one up to perhaps year 3, year 4, and that was the time where you wanted to optimize their tenure. So, and the second point on that was just to let Adam know that January 2026, I'll be in Thailand for the month. Looking forward to that. I think
Well,
that'll be I'll qualify by then.
you need to submit your form to the head of HR, Dan, and we'll assess. Okay.
We'll be counting those days, Dan. Make sure you've done those 5 years.
So yeah, we've got some great topics there. The onboarding, we touched on that. So we've been successful in our interview process. We've had an offer accepted. They've not been countered, or if they have, it's been unsuccessful. They've done their taster half day, and they're now on board. What would you say month 1, 2, 3 looks like in terms of onboarding? Talk us through some of the good things you've seen there.
Yeah, and I get why onboarding's often forgotten, right? Especially because you're running a busy MSP, or you're a hiring manager on the service desk, whatever it is, you're busy. It's not your day job, recruitment. It just gets added on to your day job. So, and it's a massive relief. Great, we've found somebody. Wow, I can get back to my to-do list now and get back into my day-to-day job. But when someone accepts, that's when the onboarding has to begin. It's not when they actually turn up for day one. That either, some senior roles, they can have 3 months notice. So it's so important that those communication channels are open, and that you are able to share information which is going to give them, more detail about the role, the company, the client. Obviously, you're not going to share anything which is they're not able to see until they're officially part of the organization. But, setting up conversation with their team their future teammates, here's where you're going to sit. Here's the clients you're going to be working with. As much information as you can provide, it keeps them really hot and excited about joining the business. And if somebody does come along and start whispering in their ear, do you know what? This company I'm joining, they can't wait to get me on board. They're so excited. They're so engaged in the process. They're so invested in me already. I already feel part of the team. Again, it goes back to common sense. You make people feel wanted. And if, as long as it's genuine and there's some thought put into it, hey, we're having a team lunch. Come and join us on the team lunch. All those things are so important to making sure when someone does join, they hit the ground running, but also they already feel part of the team.
Yeah, sounds. It sounds obvious as you describe it, but yeah, I'm sure it's not universally followed. So now we started, and what would a good onboarding look like months 1 to 3?
In a lot of sales roles, I came from the sales side of IT. when you join a new business, part of the actual interview process is often putting together your 30, 60, 90-day plan. Okay. I've never ever seen that in a technical role, but that's actually what, the business should be putting together and then collaborating with the new starter on. Okay, here's what we see your first 30 days looking like. Here's what your first week's going to be like. You're going to spend time with these people. Before you join, we'd like you to swat up a little bit more on this. What exams would you like to take? Within, your first 6 months, we'd like you to have passed this. And we have a couple of clients actually that when they do take on like first liners, they'll say, right, you're going to start at this salary, but within the first 12 months, and we're going to pay for your training, by the way, but within the first 12 months, as soon as you achieve this, you go up another £1,000. So you're incentivizing. So it's thinking through, okay, what's the role? Not just the role, because many people doing that role are different. What suits this person within this role? Let's put out a personalized pathway for this person for that first 3 months, and then that leads into their career path.
Dean,
And that's how you retain people.
yeah, personalized pathway. That's gold dust, definitely. I'm loving that. And is that something that you would start a conversation on around the point of offer, even?
Yeah, because you want to you want to establish. Look, where do you want to be? I mean, look, there's a lot of tripe, a lot of old questions that just get banded around and asked as rote, right? We think we need to ask these things. Where do you want to be in the next 12 months or 5 years? You can be a lot more specific, right? And you can only really ask those questions when you get to know someone a little bit better. Look, we'd love you to join us. How would you like us to onboard you? What do you need from us to help you hit the ground running? Okay. What tech would you like? Okay. What exams would you like to be put forward for? Or, let's look at the training plan further down the line. Now, if you approach someone, regardless of level or salary, they're going to engage with you and they're going to come back to you with what they're looking for. And it's a great place to start a conversation.
And so is this an offer conversation, which is including these questions around what the future could look like? So rather than waiting for their first day to arrive where you hand over your onboarding plan, which they've had no involvement in, you're actually starting to construct that at the point of offer, which is doing two things. It's clearly showing you care about who you're taking on and this individual, and also looking to make that process as successful as possible by including that person. So I'm just trying to sort of just understand at what point it makes sense to have this conversation, starting the conversation.
And I think that's driven by how well you're liking the candidate during the interview, right? You'll know for a fact if it's a candidate you really like and you think, oh, I love these guys to be on board, then it's about, that's when you're going a bit more depth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think they are questions that need to be asked at that interview stage if you're serious about the candidate, because it then sets the scene moving forwards, because you will then know if you get into a competitive scenario for that candidate, you're going to know what really floats their boat and is going to attract them to you. Key thing, we see it, there's only really a couple of reasons people move. The number one is they hit a ceiling, right? And we hear a lot of people who either say the role's not what I thought it was going to be or what it was sold to me as being. And I'm not doing anywhere near as much as this that they said I would be doing. So it's very important that if you do go down that route of discussing, where do you want to be in 3, 6, 12 months, that you do follow through and you do deliver as the employer, as long as they're meeting their KPIs. And, it's a two-way street.
We might have some listeners to this episode thinking, oh, that all sounds very, very straightforward and sensible. Perhaps I should have done that a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Perhaps I've got like a risk bubbling up. Is this something that you see almost like an awareness happening within an MSP, and what can they do to go back and perhaps be proactive about tackling the risk of attrition?
So just as onboarding is really important, but often forgotten about or, not considered enough, job descriptions. Okay. Job descriptions are absolutely vital, accurate job descriptions. We see a lot that are just a catch-all list, just in case somebody says, that's not my job description. It is, check page 24, So the job description is an essential document that captures the role, the requirements of the individual performing that role. And that's how you manage them and performance manage them moving forwards based on the job description. So a lot of MSPs don't have any internal HR or, full-time HR. We see a lot of HR within smaller MSPs that kind of shared function a lot of the time with finance. That always, they have quite different finance and HR, but we understand again, you're right. A lot of HR is more administrative, but retaining people, good, solid HR is vital to retain people. And it's about having the right documentation, the right processes, people management, strategic management of HR and people, and those career paths we mentioned before, but also helping people along those career paths so you are delivering. So that's why we're not just about recruitment, we also provide HR services. And, a lot of our clients start out with us on the recruitment side of things, but we get into just that conversation. How are you going to onboard these people? That job description's not great. You appreciate that it's a really important document. So we deploy our HR consultants who are all from tech into our clients, and they help them get that performance management and employee engagement piece in place.
In terms of the job description that you were just talking about and how you are using it as from a performance management perspective, how do you square the circle then of trying to attract good quality candidates that would be the right fit for you from a culture and values perspective in a document which is perhaps kind of dry because there's a performance management component to it? So do we want a separate document that describes who you are and what you stand for and what your business is about, and it's got some pretty colors in it or whatever? Or do you try and blend that into your job description and be two things in one?
Yeah. So again, a lot of HR documentation is quite basic and quite dull, but that's where then the employer branding piece comes into play. And there's no reason why you can't make your JAR documentation more engaging and have some imagery and a bit more about the business in there as well, rather than it just being a Word document with some bullets. Let's put some time and effort into. If you put the same time and effort into the marketing to attract new clients that you did into attracting new candidates, you'd have no issues whatsoever. And, every business owner will tell you it's our people. And that's what they'll tell to their clients and to the outside world. Our people are what make us different. But very few focus enough time and effort, particularly on things like the marketing aspect of attracting good candidates and also the processes and policies to retain their people. So, yeah, I think it's a common sense. Look, what would I be engaged by that? Would that attract me into this position? Or a member of my family or my child, would that excite them? And that job description, again, just to go back to that, I always say focus on the core things that person is going to be doing. Okay. Where do you need them the most? Where they're going to be spending the most time, and put a bit more detail around those things instead of just, 5 words on a bullet. Make it meaningful, make it something that can become a two-way discussion point, and then both parties can help to refine it. Because no one's a perfect match for a job description ever. No one ever ticks every box ever. So it's a case of, all right, we need to change this job description a little bit now because this person doesn't have that skill. So we need to either take that off or change the level of the skill that we require.
Yeah, I was looking for a business partner called Adam, who had run an MSP, and just the stars aligned. So
You found the unicorn.
absolutely. But to Adam's question, are we confusing here? And perhaps correct us if we're not using the right terminology here. Are we confusing what might go in a job advert with a job description that's part of a wider set of internal documents? And should there be two?
100%. A job description is not a job advert. Okay. A job description is like the manual for your car. All right. They don't, the car advertiser doesn't spend time talking you through the intricacies of that engine.
Mhm.
Okay. What they do, they show you someone driving that car down a beautiful road in a wonderful scene. That's what engages you. And it's advertising, as I said, it's part of marketing. If you want to attract somebody, don't stick a list of bullets up there, because who does that engage? How is that going to engage somebody? Okay. Tell them about the work they're going to be doing, the clients that you work with, the wonderful things that you've done, the team, tell them those things. If they're working, if they're working with the latest and greatest tech, obviously give a bit towards that. But a job description is then what lays out the detail that would just, it would dull people's senses if you put that into an advertisement. And it does. We see it all the time.
And I've come across organizations, not necessarily in the MSP sector, who have built a brochure effectively. And the brochure's for recruitment. It's marketing material for future employees. And it talks all about who the people are, who the clients are, the work that they do, the events they go on, the culture, shots of the office, et cetera, et cetera. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Why don't we put that same level of effort in with some good photography, some good copy, proper branding? And, uh, if you're a great candidate, you've got lots of employers looking to get you, and one of them sticks out with this fantastic piece of marketing. Maybe it's a physical copy, maybe it's a PDF, whatever, but you stand out, right? You put that extra effort in. And to me, that would seem like a great thing to do.
You don't have to be Google or Facebook, or Apple. If you look at their career sites, wow, they blow you away. All right. So, but you don't, obviously we don't have the resources to be able to do that or invest at that level. However, give it some thought, and it all starts with that, as we say, the employer brand. But before you can develop your employer brand, you need to know what your employer value proposition is. And quite often, we used to see this a lot in like the kind of 90s, the early noughties, where you'd come into work one day and there was a load of stickers and posters on the wall. And there are values. Okay. Well, I wasn't told or involved in that process, but I'm being told, it's been dictated to me that they are our company values. Well, great candidates and great businesses work because they include people or are made up of people whose values align. Okay, you're working in that organization because your values align either with the business owner or the rest of the people or the mission that the business is on. So you have to involve the team of people to understand what those values are. And once you have those values, that's when you can start to shape your employer brand. So what I would say is, and again, that doesn't have to be an expensive, time-consuming, costly exercise. You can, if you've only got a small team, take them out for lunch, go out for a beer. Let's just chat about what our values are, guys. What do you think we're really good at? What do we do for our customers? What would our customers say about us? Ask your customers, okay? Because that is then going to inform your brand as an employer. And you can, and that employer branding content is as important to attracting candidates as it is to attracting new clients, because they don't buy the tech, they buy the people that deliver the tech. So the more you can tell them about the team, okay, and the people. When I was selling tech, if we had a good length of service across our techies, then I would talk about that, because that gives the client the peace of mind that these guys have been together a long time. That project's going to run smoothly. They all know each other. They've done this a million times before. So talking about your people is one of the best things you can do to sell your business, not just to new employees and new candidates, but to new customers.
Really, really interesting. And I guess that then dovetails into some of the work that Adam and I do from a mentoring perspective, and going back to establishing exactly what it is the business is there to do and how it should behave and how it should be guided by its core values. So really, really interesting to almost square the circle with that point. And somehow we're at time, and it's this time in the episode we offer our guest a shameless plug. And so if any of our listeners want to reach out or carry the conversation on, how do they get hold of you?
Just can either visit our website, humanize.com, spelled HUMNIZE.com. Thought it was a great name when I came up with it, but everyone calls it Humnize. But we'll take it, or, connect with me on LinkedIn. But yeah, thank you so much for the time, gents. It's, I can talk about this stuff all day long, you can tell, but it's because we're passionate. And do you know what? A lot of it's not rocket science. I wouldn't be able to do it if it was. It's common sense. But in the heat of the moment, when you're fighting fires in your MSP, it's the stuff that gets dropped. But we say, look, pick it up when you can, because it is important.
Wise words, and thank you very much for your time, and all the best.
Cheers.
Thanks, gents. Appreciate that.